This episode of Ladies Who Leap is brought to you by Pacific Business Partners. Pacific Business Partners helps women entrepreneurs replace the chaos of running a business with clarity, structure, and confident financial decisions, from bookkeeping and fractional CFO support to marketing strategy and operations. Founder Angelica Wheaton and her team build the systems that let you finally step out of the day-to-day and lead. Learn more at pacificbp.com or follow them on Instagram at Pacific Business Partners. Before we begin, let me ask you this. Are you amazing at what you do but still feel like you're the best kept secret in your industry? Today I'm joined by podcast publicity expert Christina Lenkowski, who has helped entrepreneurs land over 1,000 podcast interviews and become recognized experts. But her success began after what she thought was a major business failure. In this episode, you'll discover how podcast guesting can build credibility, grow your business, and why having the courage to become visible might be the leap that changes everything. Let's dive in. This is Ladies Who Leap. Hi, and welcome to the Ladies Who Leap podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm also really glad that I have someone very related to podcasts as my guest today, Christina Lenkowski. Christina Lenkowski is a forward-thinking podcast publicist and educator for business owners, speakers, and authors looking to expand their credibility and go from best kept secret to go-to expert in their industries through being a guest on other people's podcasts. See how that works? In 2019, after 13 years working in the PR realm, Christina discovered what being a guest on podcasts did for her online-based business. Since then, she's dedicated her work to helping other business owners, particularly women, see the same kind of results. She's been a guest on over 100 podcasts, including her Empire Builder, Brand Cavity, and the Heather Sager Show, and helped her private clients get booked on over 1,000 top-rated shows, including Hello 7 with Rachel Rogers, Super Women Wellness, Cubicle to CEO, The Copywriter Club, and Get Paid with Claire Pelletreau, among others. Christina lives in Boise, Idaho, USA, with her husband and daughter. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Lisa. I am so excited to be here talking to other women entrepreneurs and really about the power of getting visible and what it can do in your business.
So for all those reasons, and then a lot more that we're going to get to, you are a real expert in the field. So in your field. But I really like to start at childhood. Because this is about Ladies Who Leaps. This is about what leaps you have taken to get to the point where you are now an expert in what you do and you love doing it. Mm-hmm. So looking back, because that's where everything gets started, other than past lives and generational stuff, we won't get into that. But who or what experience led you to what you're doing today, or even the person that you are today?
I think a lot of what I do today truly boils down to my parents, and quite particularly my mother. And the reason that I say a lot of that is I grew up in a household where that wasn't as common in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, and that my mom was the breadwinner. So she was who, was bringing in more income, who was higher up in the organizations that she worked for. That's not to say my dad didn't work, he did, but it was just not necessarily at the same level. And that kind of did a couple things for me and my sister growing up. And I think that what it really did is, we have a very healthy relationship with men, because we grew up around our dad, who's a wonderful man and a wonderful person. And it just taught us those healthy relationships with males in our life, right? We both went on to, I was talking about this somewhat recently, I don't remember who with, but I was like, both my sister and I dated, we obviously dated people before with our now husbands, but they were all like what I would consider stand-up guys. Like I would still say that's a good guy. You know what I mean? Even if it didn't work out in the end for whatever reason. And I really think a lot of that comes back to that relationship and seeing men take on maybe more traditional domestic role too, right? Like not seeing that as something that a man shouldn't do. Our dad was who fixed us after school snacks, made dinner for us a couple days a week. My mom was still also very involved. Like, I want to be clear. So like she also was home doing that stuff for us too. Because you have to remember, this was before laptops. This was before all this stuff. And so my mom was home, like people kind of make that comment a lot of like, oh, so was your mom gone? Like she didn't really raise you. I'm like, no, like my mom definitely is my parent. Both of my parents are who raised me. You know what I mean? But my dad took on a lot of that stuff that I think that a lot of, a lot of people didn't have that modeled to them growing up. And it wasn't odd to us. Like that was just what it was. Our parents were really partners, and that's kind of what we saw day in and day out. So I think that kind of brought me to part of who I am today, but is my mom, kind of always being really a badass, when it came to the work that she did and striving to be better and better in that work and work for things that she cared for. That was always really, really big for her. And for us she was the director of large nonprofits, director of other things that she truly cared about. And I think that was also huge there to see that passion. But then I also think I'm somewhat in the arena that I'm in is because my mom one time said to me, this was probably when I was in high school, and I bet a lot of people can relate to this, my mom was like, I just think you're going to work in PR, like in public relations one day. And I was like, you don't even know me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, so this is like a typical, right? Like 15, 16-year-old response. Like, I was like, you don't even get me. I'm a writer, because I was a writer. I wanted to, I went to school for journalism. That is what I ended up going to school for, etc. But after I did that experience and I was the editor of the paper at Oregon State University, my alma mater, and, all these types of things, I actually realized I didn't want to go that route. And I didn't want to be on the actual paper side of it. And I got offered a job at Dark Horse Comics in my hometown of Portland, Oregon. And that was really what set me on my PR kind of path. And it was a really great combination for me of writing, but also, and being able to think strategically and critically and things like that. But also, I'm very, very outgoing. I very much want to have fun. And PR really gave me that opportunity to do that, especially for some of the very cool companies I got to do it for, like Dark Horse Comics, Cirque du Soleil, a lot of tourism and travel stuff. And I think that's all, come because I don't know if someone had kind of put that grain in me of like, this might be the way that you move forward.
It's so interesting because first of all, you had two great parents, which
Yes,
were a
absolutely.
little different, or outside of the grain of that
That time. Yeah.
decade. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to have that, and then to prove to the point that when you're raised a certain way and you have these role models that you can see, you and your sister both had great
Mhm.
relationships with men. This is so important. And
Mhm.
it really shows how being given a role model in front of you and showing you how things should be definitely has an impact to you and when
Mhm.
you grow older. So that was really good. But then also finding that you thought you were going to go this way and then got that job and realized what your mom
Yes.
said was
Yes,
true.
exactly. And we've all gone through that, right? Where we thought for sure it was going to look like this, right? This is what's going to happen. It's going to look like this. And then maybe we go through it and I mean, I'm lucky to be in a position. I was lucky enough to be in a position at only 21 years old, 22 years old, where I was like, you know what? No. And kind of go another route, not a completely different route, but kind of pivot where I was and move that way. I mean, I know people that they don't get that choice, right?
Yeah.
They've maybe put in, particularly people I know that have become doctors, have become surgeons, things like that, and they don't want to do it. Right? They go through
Yeah.
school and they're just like, I don't want to do this, but I've already put in all this time and this money and this effort. Now I got to go for it. That wasn't obviously the type of thing that I was coming up against, but I think as online entrepreneurs, so many of us have had those moments where we're like, I'm going to do this and it's for sure going to work, and then we're in the middle of it or something like that, and we're just like, ooh, I don't think this is really going how I want it to go. How can I figure out how I can make this work, or pivot completely?
So before we get into what your first leap was, and I understand it was from a perceived failure, but then turned out to be a great lesson, I'd like you to explain what the definition of PR is for our listeners. So we're going to be talking about it. Explain what it
Yes,
is.
definitely going to be talking about publicity, PR as we speak today. And I love that you asked me this because I could ask five different people what they think publicity is, and I would legitimately get five different answers. And I don't blame them. We are told so many different things, about what this is. But the easiest way for me to break this down is that your marketing has three pillars, and that is owned, earned, and paid. And the the paid is in a shock to no one, the things that you pay for, right? So that's maybe paid advertising, perhaps an influencer campaign, some sort of you have paid and now you are getting in front of a new audience, right? That is what that looks like. And by the way, I am not here to say one of these is better than the other. They all work together in tandem the best. But a lot of people, we'll get into this, but a lot of people kind of focus on two of these more than the third. So there's paid, there's owned, which is all the channels that you have control of the content that goes out. Now, unless Mark Zuckerberg's listening in, you don't own Meta, you don't own these things, but you own the content that goes out on those channels, right? So that's your social media, that's your podcast. So Lisa owns this podcast, right? What goes out on here. That is your website, your e-newsletter, all those things that, again, you have control over
Right.
what's going out. Okay. Then earned is the final piece, and that is where publicity comes into play. Publicity, you have spent no money to be a guest on someone else's platform. Okay. This is a very important thing. I can get on a real soapbox about this and go off, but you should never be paying to go on a podcast, to go on a TV program, etc. That is an ad at that point, and that is to be treated differently, and it needs to be disclosed differently. So this is a very important thing that I like to point out to people. But like me being here on Lisa's podcast, this is publicity. I am going on her platform. I'm getting in front of her audience. So I'm borrowing that trust that Lisa has already built. And I am providing value. So I am coming on and saying, hey, here's what your audience would love to hear about. Let's talk about it from my point of view, from my angle, and have a great conversation about it. That is really what publicity PR is at the end of the day. And I should say PR in the sense of publicity, because if we want to really get into the nitty gritty of PR, that could also mean, internal, that could mean all kinds of different stuff. But for us and what we're talking about here today, it's really that publicity. So that could be going on podcasts, that could be on a TV station, radio station, that could be you write an article that goes into a publication or a blog on someone else's platform. Podcasts just happen to be, in my opinion, the easiest way
Mm-hmm.
to have that earned media or that earned marketing. But the one thing I'll say is, particularly one thing I've noticed with online entrepreneurs is they focus on owned and paid the most, right? They
Mm.
really, really want to have control. And that is really what those two give you, right? You get control over what's going out on your channels, and you get control over, I put this amount of money in and I saw exactly this amount of money come back, right? And so that's a really interesting thing to kind of think about. And a lot of people shy away from earned.
Well, I think it's interesting because, being a podcaster host myself and being on podcasts, I think you have a lot of control because you are the one speaking and you're the one conveying what your
You
message
do,
is.
but people get nervous about how's this going to be edited? How's this going? Do you know what I'm saying? They don't feel that they have the control. Whereas with a paid, they approve that, right? They say this is what's going to happen. And again, I know you're not out to get me. Most of these, 99% of the hosts out here, you guys are not out to get. And by 99%, I don't mean any. I've never come across one. But I mean, like, yeah, maybe if you're in the politics realm, maybe if you're in some other realms, there's some stuff you got to look out for. But like most people that are putting out podcasts, they just want to have the best content that they possibly can. But people get very, very nervous that they don't get to listen to it before it airs, right? Or they don't get to necessarily be in control of certain aspects of it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, in my case, I do send copies of the whole audio and video to my guests so they can, review it if they'd like before it gets aired.
Oh,
So
well, I will, guys,
I'm
I'm here to
listening.
tell you that's rare. I'm here to
Oh,
tell you that
really?
I want to be very
Wow.
clear. I don't want people to think that that's normal,
Yeah, that's true. I
because
haven't I
that's
haven't had that
not,
happen to me.
yeah. So I'm like, I want to say that, like, that's great. And I will tell you right now, I like personally, now I'm 100+ podcasts in the game. Like, I probably wouldn't, I'd be like, whatever you think, go ahead. Right. Because I know that they're, again, trying to have the best show they possibly can. Right. But that's because I've done this I want to be very clear. I feel comfortable, doing that. That doesn't mean that that's how you would have to be. But I just wanted to throw out there of like, don't think that all these people are going to send you the show beforehand to listen to it, because most aren't.
Oh,
So yeah,
good to know even myself. And that's the experience I've had with myself too.
yeah,
And I'll be honest, when I edit, it's been mostly editing me out than than the person who's on the
that's
podcast.
fair.
And I was told, Lisa,
Yeah,
leave yourself in, because I said, oh, if I cry, I edit out. They go, no, no, no. Leave
yeah,
yourself
that's what
in.
people
Let the
want.
emotion come
Yes,
through. That's what people want to hear.
absolutely,
So
that's what they
I
want.
have my issues with vulnerability. I'll be completely upfront. So I am tackling that also by allowing myself to
We
stay
all have
in.
our tack. We're all working on something. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I hear you.
So let's get into this is Ladies Who Leap. Let's get into your leaps. I have it written down here that one of your early failures helped you leap into the journey to success, and it had lessons to help you move forward. What was that leap and that lesson?
I think my main leap I had business wise was really when I kind of first started out in online business. I drank all the Kool-Aid, y'all. Like, all the Kool-Aid, okay? And so the reason that I'm kind of saying this is I want everyone to know, like, even these people that you might see as very successful, like entrepreneurs or online business owners, a lot of us went through a lot of this stuff that maybe you're going through right now. You know what I mean? And so for me, what I really decided, I had my daughter at the end of 2014. I worked at a PR agency here in Boise, and they tried to make it work. I tried to make it work. I didn't want to be going full time anymore. It just was what it was. And so we, amicably separated ways. I took some time off, and then when I kind of got back into it, I got into the tourism PR. That was kind of my area of expertise, right? And I had or I don't know if I had the idea or the idea got put into me that I should have a course. Okay. That the elusive online course. Okay. That we all have dreamed we would have, that would be that easy, $1 million while I sleep, type of dream that was out there. Okay. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. Like, I am the first to admit that. Okay. This was about 10 years ago at this point. Okay. And at that time, I started following someone who teaches this, very in depth, and they still do. And I will say their program is great. Like, it wasn't that their program wasn't good. It was just that it oversimplified what this all would entail, right? And so when I went to launch the first time after, I mean, truly the biggest learning curve of my life, like I maybe since like, other than like becoming a parent, like, where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like really having to like study and learn something and like do something new. And I remember I spent all this time, all this energy, all this money, because at the time, the way that how it was being taught to get people into your course was ads to webinars to just emails, right? That kind of sold in that way. And so I've dumped all this money in ads, all this stuff. I do my launch. It does not go how, I'm wanting to go. Like, maybe it sold a couple, but like just that. And I remember my husband was like, so what are we doing here? And I was like, shut up. I was like, you don't know me. Like, I will figure this out. Like, just me with my mom, basically, right? I flashed back to like 20 years earlier. But I was like, I will figure this out. And so I kind of tapped back into my own intuition, and I was like, Christina, you have sent thousands of pitches at this point in your life, publicity pitches, because I've worked for PR agencies, I've worked for companies, et cetera, getting them media coverage. And this was probably like 2017, 2018, to just give you an idea of the timeline. Podcasts were a thing, but they weren't the thing that they are now.
Right.
Like, and so I just always like to preface it with that, where I was like, okay, there are tourism podcasts out there. There are podcasts that are, have the people that I want to get in front of. And I started pitching myself and I started landing these interviews. And I went on the shows and it completely changed my business. Like I was getting in front of these people that wanted to hear from me from all over the world. They were buying my course. Like they didn't have to go through this long nurture sequence. They didn't have to go on a webinar. They didn't have to be doing all these things. They were like, "Oh, I like her," or I feel like she knows what she's talking about. Okay, let's move forward. I was getting asked and invited to speak at places, all these types of things that were happening because I started to guest on podcasts. Again, just said to myself, how do you get in front of the people that you need to be getting in front of? And that was truly the lowest hanging fruit that I could find. And it ended up being just a complete 180 for my business there until COVID. But that was really what kind of became the turning point and that absolute leap from kind of a failure to realizing what I could do through this medium.
And we'll be right back. This episode is supported by Pacific Business Partners. Here's what I love about Angelica and her team. They don't just hand you a spreadsheet and walk away. Their fractional CFO service is for the founder who's outgrown DIY but isn't ready to hire a full-time finance leader. Monthly strategy calls, cash flow forecasting, pricing analysis, and someone in your corner helping you make the big decisions with real numbers behind them. If you're scaling, planning a launch, or just tired of guessing what the data is telling you, visit pacificbp.com. Now back to the show. And you were working for a PR firm while you were doing this. Am I correct?
No, I just mean I had been doing that for, before I had my daughter, I worked for
that's right.
Well over a decade. Yeah.
So this was establishing yourself in your new
Correct.
business, which was also a huge leap, is not working for someone else, but working for yourself. So that brought us to COVID. Yes. And we know that we have all the years of that happening where it affected our businesses. In your case, it opened up this new thing with the podcast.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah, because I worked in tourism, as you can imagine, when COVID hit, even remember those like glorious 3 weeks we all thought we were just gonna like watch Tiger King and like make some sourdough bread. Like it makes me laugh when I like still kind of, and I had like a 4-year-old, or I guess like a 5-year-old at the time and stuff like that. And we all thought that it was just going to be this like 3-week thing. Of course, we all know that is not what it ended up being. But even when it was even just the 3 weeks, I was like, oh, this is not going to be good for tourism. Because if you don't know, basically your tourism collects all its money through hotel room tax, right? So every time you say hotel, say at an Airbnb, anything like that, the tax they collect, a portion of that goes towards the local tourism entity or state, kind of depends on where it is. But even 3 weeks of not having anything is a huge hit to a lot of these places. So then when it even stretched on more and more and more, again, there was just no budget to be doing PR. They weren't at that point, they're not even trying to get people to come visit. They're just trying to be able to keep their staff employed, right? Like at that point, that's what they're trying. And fair enough, that's like what their top priority is. And so understanding that all these places are going through that, I actually ended up taking my course and doing it for free. Like for these places that wanted to be able to do it, I was like, when you're ready, you can come and take this, and people will travel again. So like be prepared, be ready. Who knows when that's going to be, but it will be at some point, right? And so that was all happening, and I had already kind of had an inkling of like, why don't you start teaching people how to get booked on podcasts? Because podcasts is something we could still do.
Yeah.
Like we're just,
and it exploded at that time. Yeah.
They were like, you just said it. I mean, podcasts 2020, and it still is growing, but 2020, 2021, wow. Those were 2 years of insane growth for podcasts. I want to say it's about 40% growth of podcasts during that time. Because I like to say, truly, we had all the time.
Yeah.
right? Like, what else do we have but time, right? You could be listening to shows, but beyond that, I think a lot of us, myself included, I'm not saying this is a pride point, but I just didn't want to listen to the members of my family anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, look, I love y'all, but like, I didn't go up to my room and like listen to someone else for like an hour and then I'll be back down. You know what I mean? Um, and so I think that for a lot of people, that just ended up being true. And then it was interesting because as we transitioned kind of out of the pandemic and kind of back into quote unquote normal lives, people kind of just shifted how they listened. So like for me still, I listen a lot in my car
Yeah.
or when I'm on walks or when I'm doing house, like if I'm doing dishes or things like that. You're nodding, you all can't see, but Lisa's nodding too to say like people didn't stop listening. They just shifted where and kind of how they listened.
And there were people, famous people, that all of a sudden said, "Hey, there's this podcast thing. I'm not able
Hmm.
to film, let's say, during
Yes.
COVID, some TV shows and things like that. So let me get into COVID in the interim."
Yep.
A lot of them created these podcasts,
Yep.
which are now becoming award-winning podcasts, right?
Yep.
I would have been doing my podcast, except I was working full time for telecom and all
That'll
those
do it.
networks, data networks. I was working on shifting them all because, so I was working 11
Yeah.
hour days until I finally retired and was able to do this full time.
Yes.
So, speaking of which, you have a 6 episode podcast series,
I
right?
do. Yeah.
And that
Hmm.
is on Publicity.
Yep.
So, I want your viewers to, I want my viewers to write it down, where you can find it. And I will also have
Yeah.
a link in the description. But tell us about that.
Yeah, I did a series that's available wherever podcasts are. I use Apple Podcasts as my player of choice, so that's where I listen to everything. But you can get it Spotify, you can get it other places too. And it's called Your Podcast Publicist. And just like you said, it's a limited series that kind of talks about, hey, what is publicity? What does it look like to be on podcasts? And kind of how can you get started? What does this look like from there?
Yeah, because I'll be honest, being a podcast host, there is sometimes when I have to talk about the logistics of it, like, hey, don't ramble on forever.
Yeah,
Kind of stop talking for a minute, let me ask the question and interact with you, because the interaction and the back and forth is what makes it
absolutely.
really much more interesting.
Hmm.
And I'm learning, allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow yourself to get
Hmm.
into something that is a little more personal and
Hmm.
emotional, because that's what people want to hear. They really want to hear the true
They connect.
stories they
They
to
connect
connect.
with it for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I had a question here, although you've talked a lot about it, and why a podcast can have a lasting positive effect on self-promotion. I think there's a little even more to this, right? Because everything is in perpetuity, right? You
Hmm.
are putting on this podcast and it's out there forever for people to see. So you can
Hmm.
use it, and you can also use it little excerpts on your website and things like that. I don't think I use it enough, to be honest. But is there any other things that you can talk about, like after you've done the podcast? How do you use it for promoting yourself?
I mean,
We'll be right back after this quick break. You know that feeling when someone asks, "Who are you outside of your roles?" And you go completely blank? I'm Lisa Andria, Second Life architect and host of the Ladies Who Leap podcast. I help women build their identity for the first time because many of us were never given that foundation to begin with. We spend decades being whoever everyone else wanted us to be. My work gives women permission to drop the performance and meet their authentic self. And when they do, the people pleasing stops, decisions become clear, and life finally feels like theirs. If you're curious where you fall, take my free identity void quiz. The link's in the show notes. And if you'd like to talk to me, please go to ladieswholeap.com and click on the Let's Connect button, and let's have a conversation about your identity. Now, back to the discussion.
I mean, many of the things you just said is great. Like you just mentioned, the beautiful thing about podcasts is they live in perpetuity. They're evergreen, right? Like you said, we have clients that were maybe even clients a couple years ago. Do you know what I mean? They because I started this work in 2020. So here we are 2026. So they were clients, let's say 2023, 2024. They are still getting business from podcasts that they did a couple years ago, right? Like they're still seeing leads come in the door from that work. And that is really the beauty of podcasts because a lot of listeners are like me, where you find a show you really like and then you binge it. So you may go back, and start looking through and being like, ooh, I'm going to actually listen to the last year. I'm going to go through and pick like 10 episodes that I really want to listen to, right? Whatever. So that is a really, really great thing about it. And then, like you mentioned, every podcast interview you do could easily be 10 pieces of content for you, right? And one of those big things that I think a lot of people sleep on is a blog. And the beauty of AI is that it can now make a lot of this so much easier, like the content that's done on the back end of being on podcasts. But I love a blog post because then you have the chance to do SEO, and backlink to the host and all those types of great things. Even if you were on a podcast 6 months ago, turn it into a blog now, put it on your website, right? It's not too late. Like, I'm always a big believer in that. Like, you already did the thing, right? You already did the podcast interview. So how do you now turn it into this other stuff? So you got a blog. Definitely it should be going in an e-newsletter that you send out. Now, depending on how much you guessed, like, we send out a thing like this, but it's across all of our clients. But we do that once a month. And now that's going to have like 20 episodes on it. Because again, it's across all our clients. We're kind of taking some of the top hits and putting it in there. But you as an individual, let's say you did 2 interviews this month, put out a little, throw that in your newsletter, have a little couple lines about each one that you did, link to it, right? Let people learn more. Another hot tip I like to say is use it in your nurture emails. So like when someone signs up for your e-newsletter list and you send them their thing, send them a couple podcast interviews that you did, as well. Hey, you want to hear more about me? They're interested in you at this point, right?
Yeah.
So let them get to know you more. And then, like you mentioned, there's also always social media clips, things like that you can be putting out there. And the beauty of this, and again, something I think people sleep on is you don't have to use it right when they come out, right? You can create clips and you can put them up. You can put them up now, and you could put them up 6 months from now and 9 months from now, right? There is the opportunity to be putting things up constantly and consistently. One of our clients, Luis, he is so good at this. Like, he will create a clip and he'll put it out now, and then he'll schedule it to go out 10 months from now, right? Too. And that has worked really, really well for him.
I have learned so much from you just in sitting on this podcast. I'm sure all the people that are listening are like, oh my gosh, this is such good information. This is good, such good information. So I will ask the question that I asked before I ask about your favorite quote, mantra, or positive affirmation. I want women to know that you can get help and you can ask for help when you're having tough days, when you want some business help. Obviously, if you're looking for a coach, that's what they're there for. But for you, in your case, Christina, when you're having that bad day or you need someone to help you get through it or a business issue, who do you go to?
I would say that a lot of times, depending on what it is, if it's more of like a personal issue, I'm definitely going towards my sister or my cousin, because those are just my two closest people in the world. But if it's a business issue, I'm lucky enough to have a couple biz besties that I like to say. And so those are really great people that, I mean, just last week I was struggling with something and was able to reach out to my good friend Tamika, ask her what her thoughts were on XYZ, and just have them give their thoughts, but then also give reassurance, there, because being a business owner is hard and it's lonely if you don't have those people to reach out to. We're sitting at home by ourselves most of the time. I say this to my husband a lot, like sometimes, and he's kind of more, he goes to his office, like I'd say 3 to 4 days a week, right? If he's not traveling, and then he's here 1 to 2 days a week. And I think to him, he'll kind of get annoyed sometimes on those days he has to go into the office. And I'm like, honestly, that sounds like nice to me. You know what I mean? Like, it is so hard sometimes at home to be here all the time and stay motivated to do what you need to do, and just kind of feel a little isolated. So find those biz besties, be there for them, and then also feel vulnerable enough, because it can be really hard to open up about what's not working. That's one of the scariest things as a business owner to do.
Yeah, admitting that you need help. That's why I ask this question all the
I
time.
love it. I love it. Yeah.
I want women, especially women that are listening to this, to know you can ask for help and it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a big sign of
100%.
strength. You have the
It's
strength to say,
yes.
I need some help and can you help me? And if the person says, well, I really can't help you with that, but I know somebody that does or can,
Yes.
or,
And I think like finding those people in your life. So for me, like my daughter has autism.
Mhm.
And so my cousin and one of my other really good friends, their children also have autism. And so knowing, hey, if this is what I'm struggling with today, this is who I can go talk to, right? This is who I can talk to about that. If there's something in my business that's going on, who can I go talk to about that, right? Like almost I've heard it said before, like have your own like board of directors, right? But
Mhm.
for you, right? So it's like who, and be there for others, be on their board of directors too, right? But know who can help you with those various things. If I have a question on sales in my business, I have a sales coach, right? So that's who I'm going to go to for that. So it all kind of, have those people there and build that yourself. Who are those folks that you trust and you can, again, be vulnerable with?
Yeah. And in fact, I was just talking to one of my clients and she was saying that I have a team. She says, and you're on
Yes.
it. You're on the
Yeah,
team.
I love
You're for
that.
this. And then I have this
There's
person and I
no
have that
higher
person.
honor. There's no higher honor than
I take
being
it
on
that way.
someone's team, being on someone's board of directors, and knowing that someone feels safe
Yeah.
enough with you to open up about those things. Like, truly, that is an honor to me.
It was an honor to me to hear that for sure.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. So lastly, I always ask for your favorite quote, mantra, or positive affirmation, and it can be more than one, doesn't have to be limited. So what do you have
My
to share?
main one that I have in front of me, and is something that I truly do live by, is have the courage to suck at something new. Because I think that a lot of people get too scared to try new things, to do something, whether that's business wise, whether that's personal, etc. And like I say this because I have been there many times, right? And so just remembering and reminding myself of like, you got to just try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, or get better, right, at it, or you will get better. This is something I have to with my daughter about a lot too, because she'll get very hung up on like, well, I don't really want to do that because I'm not doing it perfectly. And it's like, well, that's not how most things work, right? Like we all have to get better. We all have to work and get better at
That's
them.
the whole
But
point of learning something new
that's
is
the whole point
getting
of life.
better as you learn.
We got to do it. We get
Yeah.
better at it, right? But
Yeah.
have the courage to suck at something new is like I said, my mantra that's in front of me all the time.
I love it. I have a quote that's confidence is knowing that nothing you do will ruin everything, but doing
Hmm.
nothing will ruin your confidence.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love
that's
that.
my one of
Yes.
my favorites. So how can people reach you? And as you know on podcasts, limited to about one place, and then if all other
Yeah.
places I can put in the description. But how could they reach
Yeah.
you, learn more about what you do?
Come on over to podcastpublicityquiz.com. We have a really fun quiz. It's very interactive quiz that you can do, and that'll kind of help you determine, okay, I think I'm on more of like a DIY path, like a pitching myself to podcasts, or I actually think maybe I'm looking for a team like Christina's to pitch on my behalf. That feels like that could be a better fit for me and my business. So it'll help you determine and kind of take you to the right spot of what makes the most sense there.
Oh, perfect. Okay, and that's easy to remember. Well, thank you, Christina. I know
Thank
you are
you.
a busy person. You do a lot for a lot of people, and you're really making an impact. So I want to thank you for all the work that you do,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for being on my podcast.
I appreciate it, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody, remember to like, subscribe, follow, and if you have a Leap story, please reach out to me because I definitely want to be able to, yeah, I definitely want to be able to tell your story because that's how we all learn and get inspired. So have a great day, and thank you again, Christina.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Ladies Who Leap. This episode was brought to you by Pacific Business Partners, helping women entrepreneurs build businesses with clarity, structure, and soul. If you're ready to take the next leap, learn more at pacificbp.com or follow at Pacific Business Partners on Instagram. And I'll see you in the next episode.